So the Calder Valley is a unique catchment. It's an upland catchment. We've got houses in the valley floor which makes us particularly vulnerable to flooding. We know it's what's called a rapid response catchment. It has a lot of infrastructure. It has roads and railways and a canal. And there are certain characteristics to the underlying geology and the land use which help us to predict flooding in the Calder Valley.
Water can move quickly. It lands on your roof, you get it straight into your gutters, it comes down your downpipes, it's into the sewers, and as far as we're concerned at that point as householders, it's gone. But that is a very, very fast process, and you just get a lot of water going into the sewers at the same time as possibly a lot of water landing on the road network, and then you get standing water issues, you get sewers backing up, and you can have all sorts of issues that you don't want.
So the Calder Valley has always flooded. But what we've seen in the last 20 years is the magnitude of these floods has increased.
Climate change equals ever more extreme weather events, ever more frequent extreme weather events, and that's what we saw here in 2015, apocalyptic flood that we'd not really seen the lights of before, and a lot more near misses in that time. We're definitely seeing more and more of these events at all extremes, from cold to heat to extra rain, and just the amount that falls.
These old Victorian drains that we have around here cope under normal circumstances, but as we're seeing with climate change, more and more flash wet weather instances, and we are in a catchment in the Mythen Road Hebden Bridge area that is rapid response. You know, the river comes up quickly, all the roads coming down the hills are soon turned into rivers. So the more we can slow down ourselves as householders and property owners, the better for everybody.
We can be sure we'll have very high magnitude extreme events in the future, and so we've got to prepare for those events.
The water that's flooding those towns and villages has all come from somewhere, so if we look further up the catchment into steep-sided clough woodlands and valleys such as Hardcastle Crags, we can start to think about solutions.
Natural flood management reproduces or replicates a whole range of things that happen anyway. So it might be as simple as reconnecting a river to a floodplain. We could be creating new woodlands. Woodland, especially in a catchment like this, can do a really good job in actually intercepting water. And if we can create rougher areas next to our rivers, then we can reduce the amount of water going into the watercourses and reduce peak flow.
If we've got incised gullies, then what we're doing here is effectively storing the water in those gullies behind leaky dams. If the water is running on unvegetated slope, it's going to run quickly. So we can slow it down by increasing the roughness on the slope. So by placing, as we've done here, contour place logs, then the water has then got a chance to be slowed. In a woodland, there's quite a large void ratio within the soils there, so that soil can be used to actually store water.
By selectively felling some of our big mature beech trees, that allows more sunlight to penetrate the forest floor so that better range of species can grow. Those trees that we've felled are then used to create the leaky dams that are slowing the flow of water in the streams themselves.
Each one of those large woody debris dams will store no more than a metre cubed of water. And that sounds like quite a small impact when we need to store large volumes. But if you imagine scaling that up from Hardcastle Crags, looking at the whole of the Hebden water, indeed looking at the whole of the upper Calder catchment, if we looked at every single intervention, then those would accumulate and actually create larger storage for one, but probably just as significantly, it would reduce the flow and the speed of the flow into the watercourses. But in its wider sense over the whole catchment, including new woodland planting next to floodplains and including moorland restoration, ecologically it's restoring new habitats and helping us to sequester carbon as well. So we can see that through natural flood management, we've also got a number of other benefits.
So at this point here, we've got the stream running below a stone culvert under a path, comes out the other side, hits this leaky dam, and it's split by the leaky dam into two rivulets. So previously it was just running straight down, and it's now sort of fanning out across the woodland floor, and this stream is effectively absorbed by the woodland, as we'll see shortly. Further down, the woodland is actually taking up all of that water there, and instead of it going straight into Crimsworth Dean Beck. So that's the original stream course there. This is the water that we've diverted, and as we can see, the diverted water is just disappears into the woodland soils. Here, what previously was quite an incised gully, which water was travelling down very quickly, we filled it up with brash and logs, and the effect is to push out the water effectively back onto the floodplain, if you like. So we can see here we've got overbank flow going on. So rather than it being channel flow in a narrow channel, which is very rapid and very destructive, the water is flowing as sheet flow across the woodland floor, so it's got an opportunity to actually be absorbed by the woodland floor. So where in areas of woodland where we don't have any streams but we've got fell logs, what we've been doing is positioning the logs to run parallel with the contours, and the idea of that is to intercept the runoff down this slope. So when the runoff hits these logs, it's got a chance to be absorbed by the woodland floor, and they're working quite well. So we've got these everywhere where we don't have streams, but we've got logs.
So some of the tools that we're using today, you've probably not seen them before. The reason we do tool talks is because we carry out risk assessments. We're working in a strange environment, a risky environment, and many of the people that come here have not worked here before, have not worked with the tools that we're using before. So we need to make sure that all these volunteers are familiar with the type of tools that we're going to be using. Probably the most aggressive and dangerous thing that you're going to be using today is a bow saw, anvil type loppers, different bits of log handling equipment. We've got log jaws. We've got single tongs designed to be used by one person, pointed jaws, a pointed spike, used for turning the timber or lifting it, get it well engaged into timber and spin. The whole essence of tool talks and risk assessments is to make sure that people are working safely, and basically that they all go home at the end of the day without any injuries, and that's a success for us. If they've enjoyed themselves, got away without any injuries, that's a success.
Having been here now for 3 years doing this work, in having built, nearly 500 leaky dams currently at Hardcastle Crags, we now are starting to prove that what we do works.
When we set up this project, one of the things we were asked to do was to come up with some data as to the efficacy of what we were actually doing. So I designed this system that I could manage on a basis that we wouldn't take up too much time, but would give us sufficient information to prove that what we're actually doing actually works. So what we've got is a monitoring station designed to do exactly that. So this stream I think has around 10 or 12 leaky dams on. So we've got one of these plates at the top, and obviously one here which is at the bottom. And this is a V-notch plate weir. So it's a 90-degree notch cut in the top of the steel plate. The steel plate's hammered in to create a dam. When you first do it, they do leak quite badly, but this is actually silted up quite nicely now. So all the water's going across the V, which means we can measure the flow rate across that V just simply with a ruler, and you can use a little formula to calculate the flow rate. And we're also doing that in real time using this. So this is a pressure transducer that sits in this tube. The tube's got holes drilled in it, and that logs the pressure or the height of that water column over time and in real time. So I come here every 2 months and download the information off that. I've also got a time-lapse camera on there, so that is pointing at that gauge, so I can check it 2 ways, through time-lapse footage and also through the pressure transducer real-time information. To obviously measure this against a control, we've got another stream just over there that doesn't have any leaky dams, but exactly the same monitoring system. So we've got a control to compare, and the hydrographs on that stream actually match each other, which is what you'd expect, whereas the hydrograph on this stream is a lot flatter at this position than it is at the top. My mobile phone on top of there. And take pictures every, 3 or 4 times a year, just to see how the situation is changing over time. So this is New Bridge, and on this bridge is an ultrasonic monitor that measures the height of the water above the stream bed. So in real time we can tell by looking on the internet where these rivers are in a flood event. The results from this is a real-time hydrograph. So that's the principle, by putting all this information together we can see the effect of the natural flood management measures that we're doing on these rivers over time. At the end of this project, hopefully we're going to have some good data, and if we can get it right here, then we can use those principles elsewhere. And it's not just in Calderdale, it's countrywide.
When people say NFM, they tend to mean the rural side of things. And when people say sustainable drainage systems, they tend to mean urban. But actually, they're kind of essentially synonymous with each other. It's not just about woodlands and fields. Urban areas can contribute a lot, because the urban areas are where people have made the biggest difference to date by paving over and tarmacking and putting houses and patios over what would have been a natural environment.
Basically, sustainable urban drainage solutions, it's any idea that just slows the movement of water either into the ground, across the ground, but inevitably stopping it getting to the rivers as quick as it can do. You'll see on the container behind us we've put what we call a green roof, and it's a way of holding water back, keeping it out of rivers for as long as possible, certainly around here stopping flash floods that do tend to happen very quickly.
So here we've got the water coming from the roof of Hebden Bridge Town Hall here. What the Calder Rivers Trust and Slow the Flow have done is build these rain garden planters. So now when the roof water comes off, it comes into this large storage area with beautiful plants in it. So it filters gradually through the planter before it ends up in the river.
The opportunity mapping is something that both Stuart and I have had on our minds for a little while, which is about putting together an online map that's a resource for people so they can click on where they live or work or have an influence and see how we think that site could help with either natural flood management or sustainable drainage systems. So on this street we can see that there's a lot of tarmac and a lot of hard paving, and so how about if you replace some of that with some trees or some rain gardens, etc. And just to kind of give people food for thought about how actually next time they're doing a project they might be able to change their environment to mimic natural systems better and slow the flow of rainwater. We also get additional green infrastructure benefits like biodiversity in our urban areas and mental and physical health and aesthetic value, all those additional things, as well as this slowing the flow of rainwater to the rivers.
When we first started Slow the Flow, we recognised that there was an awful big job to be done, and although we were all very keen to go out there and do as much volunteering as we could, we recognised that we could do more if we came together as a group. And in doing that, we recognised that there's various formalities groups need to go through to establish themselves, to have credibility with the authorities and what have you. I think if any organisation wants to set something up like Slow the Flow in their own local areas, having an appropriate skill set within the management group is essential. You need people who can bring others together. You need people who can do the paperwork. You need people who can actually do the marketing and the publicity to get acknowledgement of the work that you're involved in. And you need to generate some income. There's always a need to buy equipment, buy tools, get people from A to B and what have you. If you don't have that income stream, it's very, very challenging to do the work that we're involved in. We promote ourselves extensively through social media. We've also gone out of our way to make sure that we present ourselves physically to all of the groups that count within the local area. So we've spoken to all the local councils.
What they did really well and what I found really convincing was that they came to us with ideas and suggestions rather than kind of asking us what we could do. And then as a council in partnership with them, we could work together with them to try to put something together and try to support them as best we could.
And any other organisation that's in existence in the town, for example, we'll go and speak to the local Rotary Club about the work that we're doing. We'll speak to the local mums and children's organisations. So just getting out there, putting your message across and doing it on a consistent basis, it really pays dividends. When we're engaging in natural flood management, the support of the landowner is essential. So then it was basically a question of talking to the National Trust, and locally the manager of the estate was very, very supportive and has continued to be supportive all the way along. And I can't emphasise too much the importance of that personal relationship in getting anything done as a small local community organisation. It's about presenting yourself as a credible, friendly and informative group that can do some good work.
We have so many different types of volunteers coming to work with us. We have small children from the age of 5 years old who are coming with their mums and their dads right through to their grandparents. You know, we've had 2 or 3 generations of people coming and working with us in Hardcastle Crags, and it's all predominantly through word of mouth. It's all people sat around the breakfast table saying, "What are you doing this weekend?" "Oh, well, I'm going to Hardcastle Crags with Slow the Flow." Social media works so well to inspire and encourage and motivate people to get out over a weekend and to come with their friends and to work with us on a project like this.
The big element of this is getting the community to work together up here, so getting volunteers to come on a regular basis, them telling their friends, telling other people so that they can come up and experience what's happening up here. I'm a flood warden, so in terms of the flood warden network in Calderdale, I absolutely translate everything that we're doing out to those other groups so that they can come and volunteer, but also just to let them know what we're doing. It could benefit their flood group, but also you've got a group of willing volunteers that are doing something around flooding that can be used here as well.
People in Hebden Bridge need to know that things are happening now, and they are, because of the work that Slow the Flows do. And that, you know, that makes people feel secure. I posted something on the community Facebook page I run, and I had someone underneath it say, "I feel a lot better knowing that people are up in Hardcastle Crags making a difference. Thanks for keeping us safe." And you know, there's no kind of better accolade you can have than that. When you think about the psychological impact that people are out there trying to help, I think that's something that can't be underestimated in terms of the value of Slow the Flow's work, but also of their communications.
There's a lot of work being done in Calderdale at the moment around mental health and how getting groups of people together and making new friends, and people are working hard together to do something for other people, which is really nice, and the mental health benefits around that are really great, and being able to translate that to other areas is just brilliant.
Other communities now are starting to come to us and say, well, you know, what have you done? How has this worked? How have you put this group together? What are the benefits? How does it all fit together? We publish all the results and all the evidence that we have on our website, and that's a really important part of sharing the knowledge that we've got for other communities to utilise.
The Slow the Flow National Trust partnership has been absolutely brilliant. National Trust and Slow the Flow are very much working towards the same aims. We both want to manage the water that's coming off the land here, and we both want that to benefit the community. So Slow the Flow have been really fantastic at garnering loads of local enthusiasm from the local community. National Trust's obviously got years and years of experience delivering practical volunteer days, woodland management, that sort of thing. So the combination of those two things meant that the volunteer days that we're able to deliver on a 2 weekly basis have been absolutely brilliant, and they've been really well attended. We've got loads of work done.
Without the National Trust, allowing us to work on the land, without the money from the Environment Agency to help us devise and develop this project, and without all the volunteers coming together to support us in that, none of this would have happened.
Slow the Flow, Calderdale have been an amazing force for good, and I think they continue to be. We can sort of now see that natural flood management is mainstream. It might not be yet, but I think it's moving that way. Visually, there's been a difference, sort of on after hard rain. There's not the amount of water coursing into the river as there used to be. Consequences of that have very much seen water staying on the landscape more. You see less little sprouting waterfalls than you used to before. Visitors have very much definitely commented on the fact that now there are less of these spontaneous, if you like, waterfalls. And that's because the interventions that Slow the Flow have put in have been doing their job, and they've been keeping the water sort of on the landscape longer for it to soak in, but also find different paths and possibly be channeled through some of the hard drainage and then into like a next step worth of natural flood management. So, not just anecdotal, definite differences.
The scheme in Hardcastle Crags has been an absolute success from the point of view of proving that this kind of natural flood management works. It's also led on to other natural flood management type schemes around the catchment and around Calderdale. So we now work with the local council, Calderdale Council, and have developed an NFM grant scheme to encourage other landowners to allow their land to be used for attenuation ponds, leaky dams and the like. So it's inspired lots of other people and lots of communities around Calderdale to get involved in the work that we do.